live streaming on
All
Facebook.
right. Well, very good. You'd think this was the first time I had done this, but I want to welcome everybody to another weekly episode of NOMBERG Law Live. And as I do each Tuesday, I try to bring you conversations with interesting people in their areas of expertise. And I've got my new friend, Nick DiNardi, on the other line. He's in the Chicago suburbs. Good morning, Nick. How you doing, friend?
I'm good. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate you having a few minutes. And we talked about the room you're sitting in. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but I love the background. So thank you for making some time this morning.
Always.
For those of you who don't know Nick yet, you're going to get to know him pretty soon. I think he's an up and coming rising star, at least in my eyes. His dad and I were in college together. We were teammates at Vanderbilt, but that's not why we're talking today. Nick stands on his own 2 feet. He is a former college prep star who played at Loyola. We're going to talk about that famous Final Four run in a few minutes. But more importantly, Nick has formed an organization called Bigger Than Basketball. And we're going to talk about why he's formed that nonprofit and what he's doing with it. But before we jump into those things, Nick, tell us a little bit about your background. All I know is you're from the Chicago suburbs and you played college basketball, but there's a lot more to you than that. So talk to us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Like you said, I grew up in Chicago. I had an interesting childhood, obviously with my dad playing Vandy, you know how that went. Played football and I'm a bigger guy. I'm 6'8". I've always been bigger. So I started off playing a little bit of football as a kid. And one of the more defining moments of my life came when I was 11 years old, when I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And that was actually the axe to my football career. I stopped playing football after that and got into basketball. I started to, play in rec leagues and for, elementary school, high school, things like that. I actually was on the B team in our freshman high school on our squad, and I kept working my way up. Eventually started as a junior in several games, ended up hurting my knee my senior year, and that kind of ended my career. It was actually our first game of my senior year, and that was basically it. And so I decided to focus on academics going into college. I chose my decision to go to Loyola based on those academics and decided that was going to be it for basketball. And so I ended up going to Loyola. I enjoyed my time there as a student for the first 2 years, where I played club basketball, which was basically like a little bit lower from the Division I sports, but not technically intramurals. And we traveled around the Midwestern states, went to Iowa State, played a tournament there, went to Marquette, a couple of local universities in the Midwest area. And eventually this actually led for me to get a position as a walk-on on Loyola's basketball team. This came about actually during the summer of my sophomore junior year, which is a very interesting story. I wasn't looking to get on the team. I wasn't talking to any coaches. I was actually going to class in the morning. I took summer classes because I switched my major to pre-med. And so I started to take some of those science classes to catch up. And I was walking to my lab one morning at 8 a.m. And one of the coaches said, I've seen you play up at the rec a couple of times. We need some big bodies to throw around in practice. Would you be interested to come out? And I said, yeah, coach, I got to go to class right now for a couple of hours, but I can stop by your office afterwards. And so I did just that. And next thing I know, I was practicing with the guys, trying to get some reps in. And one day I kind of came into the locker room and they didn't really tell me, but they put up my name on a locker. And that was the start of the story, where we ended up in the Final Four on my senior year. And that's really my background on basketball and my athletics and where that kind of all took me.
Boy, what a story, how it unfolded, that you're playing club level, which can be very competitive given the sport and who you're playing against. And somebody took notice of you, of course. I mean, it was obvious, but that's what a Cinderella type run for a couple of years, which culminated in you guys in 2 years ago beating, see if I have this right, Miami, Tennessee, Nevada, and K-State.
Yep.
Before you eventually lost to Michigan in the Final Four. But I want to put that on pause for just a minute, Nick, and we'll circle back to that toward the end.
Okay.
But after college, or maybe during college, you ultimately created a nonprofit called Bigger Than Basketball.
Mhm.
So I want you to talk to us. What is that organization? I'm going to put the link to the website in our show notes as we're talking here. But tell us, what is Bigger Than Basketball?
Yeah, so after our Final Four run, it had always been in my mind that I had wanted to help other people with Crohn's and other debilitating diseases that are more so inherited and passed down to families, and that are autoimmune diseases. And that's kind of why I switched to medicine. And when we were going through the Final Four run, I realized that we kind of had this platform. All eyes were on us, and it'd be a good opportunity to try and raise some awareness about Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. And that was one of the things that I had always seen as a child, is that I felt like throughout my disease, there weren't a lot of people who were really there for me, who understood exactly what I was going through. And now I'm not talking about, my parents or anything like that, but other people with the disease. They really understand what's going on in your body and how it makes you feel. And so I started talking to some reporters about, my journey with Crohn's, and kind of how I told you guys about my walk-on story.
Mm-hmm.
And really kind of realized that people were actually paying attention to it, and that there could be a lot of good that came out of it. And so right after our Final Four run in June, August, after that, a couple of months after the Final Four, I started the non-for-profit put in for organization. And basically, we started to contact people who have ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, who I've known throughout my life. And we established Bigger Than Basketball, which is aimed to help those people who are either struggling with their disease status, who were just diagnosed, or really just need someone there as a support group in case something goes wrong, whether you have a flare-up or you're in remission. And that's kind of how Crohn's and ulcerative colitis goes, is there's periods of flares, periods of remission. Currently, I am in remission, which I'm very thankful for. I've been in remission for about 3 years, but other people aren't as lucky. It's sometimes people go through flares for most of their lives. They don't get away from their symptoms. And so it can be a very challenging disease, both mentally and physically. And so we've really started to try and connect with our communities in the local Chicagoland area. We've done a couple of fundraisers with high schools, gotten the high school tournament together, had a really great showing, got some of the local high schools did like a one-day shootout, and we brought together everyone to raise some money and to bring some more awareness to Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. And of course, Loyola has been really great with it. We've done an event there, and was able to bring everyone in the arena and kind of show some statistics on Crohn's and colitis to a sold-out crowd, which was really awesome, trying to spread as much awareness and positivity for those people who might be struggling.
Wow, what a start. What a start. You're just starting on your journey. But Nick, talk to us a little bit about, for people who don't know what these conditions are, in general, how is it that they affect the body? What is it that it causes people to have to not be able to do? How does it disrupt life in general?
Yeah, so they're both autoimmune diseases, or thought to be part of an autoimmune disease family. And they affect people by, basically, you have an overactive immune system. So your body is attacking itself when it thinks that it's sick, when you're really not. And so you see a lot of people with symptoms of severe abdominal pain. That was kind of my main one as a child. I was in severe abdominal pain. You see a lot of extreme weight loss, especially with Crohn's. And a lot of times these things can only be handled with a quick treatment of prednisone or some type of steroid, which causes a lot of different symptoms and side effects on your body. And so a lot of people really struggle with extreme fatigue, having to go to the bathroom pretty often, which is one that not a lot of people talk about. But, for someone who's in a serious flare, they could be going to the bathroom 30 to 40 times a day.
Wow.
And that's really, when you think about it, trying to plan your schedule around 30 to 40 times a day, having to go to the bathroom, it's pretty tough. And so, a lot of people struggle with the majority of the symptoms I had said. So it's been a tough uphill battle for a lot of people.
Well, playing big time high school sports and then ultimately playing Division I sports, how did you learn how to deal with all of this? Because the amount of exercise you were doing every day, your caloric intake, just being on that regimen of a D1 athlete, it's not like you're just, average Joe going through his day, but how did you adapt? How did you deal with it?
Well, I think as much of a I don't want to say curse it was, but also a blessing that I was diagnosed very young, because it came as I grew up. I felt as if it was my normal life.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that my doctor had always asked me, which I really, really has stuck with me, is, okay, how do you feel? If I said I feel good, I feel normal. He asked me, okay, is it normal in comparison to you or comparison to a normal person? How many times are you going to the bathroom? Okay, well, a normal person doesn't go to the bathroom 7 times a day. Right. So let's try and get those number down. Let's try and get you healthier. And in terms of when I started to get into Division I basketball, I went through a flare up when I first joined the team at Loyola. And my main obstacle during that time was my fatigue. A lot of people who have Crohn's are also anemic. And so we don't have a lot of iron in our body. So sometimes we need a little either iron supplement or an IV infusion of iron to keep us going at certain times. And so I actually had to go and get some IV infusion for iron to keep my body able to, go with some of the exercise that I was, some of the high levels of exercise that I was going with. And so that's something that was challenging because it was about every couple weeks I was going into an infusion center to make sure that I could basically have enough energy to do what I wanted to do. And it's hard when you can't find that in yourself. And so, like I said, a lot of people struggle with this, but it is something that once you really learn how to control it, because it's different for everyone. So I have a different diet. I have a different regimen than other people with Crohn's might have. And what works for them might not work for me. So it's very individualized. And it's something that you really kind of have to learn on your own through trial and error. And luckily I've had enough time to kind of go through those trial and error decisions and figure out what works best.
And Nick, is this a genetic condition? Is this passed through generations?
Yeah, there is a genetic component to it. They don't necessarily know how the exact genes that are involved in it. There's a lot, but for my siblings, right? My siblings have about a 50% chance of having Crohn's because I have it, compared to my parents who aren't at much risk, even though they passed it to me. I was actually the first one in my family to be diagnosed with Crohn's. So not really sure where it came from, but we've been fighting it. So.
Well, your dad probably blames it on your mother's side of the family, and your mother probably blames it on your dad's side of the family.
Oh yeah, there's pointing fingers for sure.
I'm sure.
Luckily, they agree that they want me healthy, so that's good.
Well, that absolutely. Well, I've got so many things to ask you, but I want to welcome everybody. We've got a bunch of folks in here watching Nick from different parts of the country, and if you guys have questions or comments, throw them into our comment section here in the show notes. I'm talking with Nick DiNardi. We're talking about Bigger Than Basketball, a nonprofit that he's founded and is on the board and leads, dealing with trying to educate people, trying to be a resource to people who have Crohn's or who have UC. And Nick, as you have matured from a preteen to a teen to now an adult, you said you're in remission for about 3 years now. Does this something that stays with you potentially for life, or I don't know if this is the right term, do you grow out of it, or does your body eventually, how do you deal with that going forward?
Yeah, so that was something that I had to come to grips with young in my life, was that this was going to be something I'd have to deal with for the rest of my life. It won't go away. It might get better. It might get worse over time. I will for sure go through flares and periods of remission like I am now. So really always trying to prevent the next flare is what's on my mind, as much as I can eat healthy, can make sure I'm taking my medicine on time and all of that. And luckily, since I was a child up until now, medicine for inflammatory bowel disease, which is what Crohn's and ulcerative colitis kind of fall under, is a category of inflammatory bowel disease. The medications have become much better. We've moved a lot from, as a kid, I was taking sometimes 16 to 20 pills a day. And now I only get an infusion every 8 weeks, a biologic infusion. So it's a lot different. They're a lot more effective. And so that has helped a lot. And so luckily I hope to stay in remission for as long as I possibly can, just like everyone with the disease does.
Well, you had mentioned earlier about that you have a specific diet for yourself. Let's talk just a little bit about dieting. Let's talk a little bit about exercise and overall health. How do those things impact, if at all, with Crohn's or IBS as a whole?
Yeah. So just a quick correction. This is some very, very common. IBS and IBD are completely different. So IBS, no problem. IBS is more so somebody who might have an upset stomach or often when they eat certain types of food. IBD is a autoimmune disease.
Thank you for correcting.
Yeah, of course.
Very important.
But yeah, my diet, I try to stay on a Mediterranean diet. I try and cook a majority of my food. I eat a lot of fish, use some vegetable oils and things like that, cook vegetables in general, try and stay away from greasy things. Greasy things can upset my stomach, as they do with a lot of people with this disease. And in terms of exercise, I love playing basketball, so that's always good cardio. I try and get at least a 30-minute workout in when this quarantine was not in effect. I do a lot of Orange Theory fitness. It reminds me a lot of the training I used to do. Are you an Orange Theory guy as well?
Well, I'm newly converted. My daughter, Emily, who's home, has long been an Orange Theory fitness member. So she's introduced me to the home workouts, and they are no joke. I did one yesterday and I was wiped, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, they're very tough workouts, and I enjoy them. I enjoy having a coach there who's there to push you and working out with people around you when you're in studio. I know it's a little different time right now, but yeah, I've been doing about Orange Theory for about a year. I try and go about 3 or 4 times a week, stay active, keep my heart healthy. Because I know you might know this, but after college sports, it's a lot different. It's a lot of an adjustment on your exercise regimen. Yeah. So I've been trying to make sure I don't pack on the pounds after basketball, but yeah, just trying to stay healthy. I mean, we've got several studies at the University of Chicago that are working on, trying to understand the technology with wearable technology like Fitbits and Apple Watch, and how that can play a role into maybe predicting when you're going to have a flare up.
That's where I was going to go with this. You've thrown yourself into this. It seems like this is what you're doing for a living right now. You're a researcher, and I want you to talk about that. What are you involved in? Because I know you've been published already in some papers that you're helping to research with. It's important things, and I'm sure you guys are on the leading edge of some cool things that are probably on down the road for you.
Yeah. And so I started out at the University of Chicago as a volunteer, actually my senior year when we were going to the Final Four. At that same time, I was volunteering. So I was doing twice a week, depending on my basketball schedule. I'd actually take the train all the way down to the South Side. It was about an hour-and-a-half commute, train and bus to the lab. But I've been involved there for about 3 years now. I've really enjoyed it. Like you said, we have some really cutting edge and high throughput technology that we use for our research. And we've got, obviously some of the greatest experts in the world at the University of Chicago. And they really are incredible in terms of directing the research. And we've been able to do a lot for ulcerative colitis and Crohn's specifically, but also with celiac disease and other diseases that our lab works with. But going into some of like the studies that we've done right now, my main study is looking at inflammatory bowel disease and the association with a liver disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is arguably the single most risk factor that you could have with IBD. It really exacerbates the symptoms and the outcomes of the disease. So we've been looking into that. We're almost done. Probably have 6 months to a year before we publish the paper, but it should be a very good paper, a lot of different angles that we looked at this problem. So that's very exciting. And then of course, coronavirus. We're starting to look at coronavirus with ulcerative colitis and with Crohn's. One of my closest coworkers is actually working on the coronavirus samples out at what is it? I want to say it's Abbott Laboratories, and I think I'm right because it's right outside here, and we have a partnership with them. So it's been really great seeing some of the incredible research that my lab has produced, and being able to be involved with that is really incredible, and be around some of these experts is awesome.
I bet that's a great feeling, knowing that you're being part of something that's for the greater good, for the bigger of community. Nick, let's kind of shift now back to the nonprofit. Let's talk about bigger than basketball. You put it together because of your history, because of your life story thus far. What does Bigger Than Basketball offer to the community? Who's on the board, or who participates in it? How can people get in touch with you or with the nonprofit if they want to learn more information, those kind of things?
Yeah, so if you want to learn some more information, you can email info@biggerthanbasketball.org. Bigger Than Basketball is all how it should be spelled.
Okay.
And if you want some more information, absolutely email us. You can visit our website at biggerthanbasketball.org. But just in general, for reaching out to people and how we're helping the community, with some of the money we've raised, we've actually been able to help fund the University of Chicago's patient support group. So every 2 weeks, there's a patient support group down in the city for people who have IBD, or someone, if your family member is affected by IBD and it's specifically affecting you, come in and talk about it. It's really, really great opportunity for people to who have the disease to meet others and to really see how other people really handle their disease and how other people are doing. And it's really great. The first time that I ever was involved in one of those was really eye-opening to see that you were not alone in this disease. And that's really the main goal of this organization, is to show people that there are others with this disease and they go through the same problems or similar problems than you do. And, you know, if you put your heads together, you guys can help each other support group. You know, have a safety net for when times get tough, because with this disease, times get tough regardless of when you want them to. And so it's really important to have that backbone, that you have someone to kind of fall back on and hold you up. And so we've just been trying to get as much involvement in the communities, like I said, the local high schools, and helping other kids out who are in the high school who might not really speak about their disease, really be comfortable with themselves. And so just trying to give as much of a support system for those people with IBD right now in the greater Chicagoland area, but hopefully soon in the rest of the country.
Well, what a fantastic resource, Nick. Now, granted, the world has kind of been put on hold for a month and a half, but does Bigger Than Basketball have any events in the Chicago area coming up, or things that you want to promote for people who may be able to get to these events that may be of interest to them?
So as of right now, we were planning a golf outing. That doesn't look like it's going to happen, unfortunately, with everything that's going on. But usually within towards the end of the year is when we will do our fundraiser with Loyola. We're waiting for their basketball schedule to come out so we can kind of look at a date, try and get an event at a basketball game and a reception afterwards, which always seems to be a lot of fun. And, you know, obviously if we can find a time for the golf outing, that would be great. But other than smaller events where we're raising money like this, the best opportunity to get involved is to either email us or to visit some of those patient support groups, because those really are very, very great resources for people with IBD.
And guys, I've put a clickable link to the Bigger Than Basketball website. When we go there, Nick, what kind of things would we be able to learn from there? What kind of areas is covered in that website?
So right now, we've got a couple of stories in general about my background, and then a story from my mother, kind of trying to communicate with other mothers what it might be like and how to deal with those problems as a mother, what it's like when your son or your daughter or someone you know gets diagnosed with the disease, how you might be able to handle it, the best thing you can do for it, which I think is actually a really great resource. It's titled The Mother's Perspective. And I think it's something that is also looked over when people are diagnosed with the disease, is not only how it affects that person, but their loved ones around them, especially parents. Because obviously as a parent, you don't want that on, you don't wish that on your kids.
No. Nick, I meant to ask you earlier, and it just hit me. These conditions, before you're diagnosed, are probably assumed to be other conditions. They could mask or have similar symptoms to other very common conditions. How is a person, like, how were you diagnosed? How did they ultimately determine this is what you had versus ruling out other conditions?
Yeah, so in general, inflammatory bowel disease is very difficult to diagnose. It presents as a lot of different things. They usually test for a lot of other ailments before they test for IBD, unless it's a very clear-cut case. And a lot of times it has to be diagnosed by colonoscopy. So for me, it took about a year from the onset of symptoms until I was diagnosed. And that's usually about the average, somewhere around a year. For children, it's a little bit longer. And they've started to bring those numbers down a little bit more as gastroenterologists try and train primary care physicians in how to spot these things. Because the quicker you can get treatment on it, the better your outcomes will be. So that year period where people might be experiencing symptoms and not actually have any treatment or a diagnosis can really do number on the body. So it's been very difficult to diagnose the disease in recent years. And, obviously being put through a lot of tests. I was put through a lot of tests as a kid that I wish, I did not have to go through. But
Sure.
eventually, I was able to get a confirmed diagnosis and get some treatment. But it's one of those ones that's very difficult to diagnose. And so a lot of primary care physicians are, looking at other options before they really test for Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or send them to a gastroenterologist.
Well, it sounds like at your such young age, when you were ultimately diagnosed, it was probably, oh, good, we finally know what it is, and now we got to figure out how to deal with it. But from what I've seen from afar and from our conversation, you're handling it beautifully. You're wise well beyond your years and well beyond your father's years at that age when I knew him. And I hope he's listening to some of this right now or later on. But Nick, as we get close toward the end of our conversation, and I really appreciate you spreading the information that your expertise, your just full commitment into this. And I applaud your efforts to this point, and we're going to keep watching you into the future. But I want to shift topics a little bit, and let's go to the hard ball. Let's go to the hard court. Talk a little bit about basketball. You were in the Final Four 2 years ago, this time 2 years ago, and just it came out of nowhere. Not just you being a walk-on and then getting some time to play, but then who would have thought your school, I mean, you guys sure thought it, but you're not one of the traditional, Kentucky Dukes of the world. So you were shocking everybody for about 3 weeks there in 2000, spring of 18. Put us back in that time frame, your mindset, was it all a dream? Or were you guys really able to realize, hey, we're going to take down Miami, then Tennessee, then Nevada, then K-State? Talk to us a little bit about that time period.
Yeah, I think you really can't get into that unless you get into the year before. And I'll tell you why, because there was a lot of the same exact pieces from our year that we went to the Final Four in our 2017 team. Mm-hmm. And it started, with Milton Doyle, who is now in the G League. He's a great player for, I believe he's still with the Bulls in their G League program. But that year we lost probably about eight games or so by less than 2 possessions. And so we had I think we were a couple games above 500 or right at 500 when we really could have been a lot better. Could have been a 20 to 25 win team. And we just missed some of those ones down the line. And so that really set up the whole groundwork for the next year because we knew what it was like to get punched in the mouth in those last couple of minutes of the game and lose a couple close games. And so when we got back our good core of guys, we were obviously an older team, and we started, running open gyms that summer, training. You could see that there was a different type of locked in mentality that we had. And Coach Porter Moser, I mean, I can't speak highly enough of him. He is incredible. He is such a tactical guy and very smart, great leader. And he really helped us out that summer to find out what our focus was going to be for the season. As a team, to our credit, we stuck to it. And so going into the season, we felt very confident. We started playing really well off the jump. And then unfortunately, one of, I believe it was Ben Richardson, got injured first. And he broke his hand down in Kansas City. And that was a tough loss. But we did fight through it. We got still were winning while he was out. But then the second injury came when Clay Custer, our point guard, got hurt when we actually beat number 5 Florida. So that was a big game for us because although Ben wasn't there and Clay had got hurt towards the end, we still were able to, as a team, pick it up and win that game. And it was a huge moment for us because we got the confidence that we needed in terms of we can beat anyone. Power 5, SEC, at Florida, a huge win. And we were playing without arguably our best player in Clay Custer and our facilitator towards the end of the game. So that was huge. And then that confidence really just tumbled over into the new year. And I think by the time we got to March Madness, we were on like a 13-game win streak or a 10-game win streak, something like that. And we were really rolling. And we were just doing it. It wasn't really, any pressure. We were just having fun and we were enjoying it, and we were enjoying the guys we were around. I mean, our trips, we fly private plane like a lot of Division I schools do to our games. And, we were just all having fun, whether it was on a bus or the plane or in the locker room or at dinner or whatever. We were all just enjoying ourselves, and our team really meshed well together. And so I think leading up to March Madness, we were ready for it because we felt that championship victory in the Missouri Valley. We got the regular season championship and the conference championship. And then going in, and we matched up with Miami. And that seemed like a game kind of like Florida for us. They had a really good player in Lonnie Walker, who plays for, I believe, the Spurs now. And we locked in. And, I actually watched that game with Ben Richardson about a month and a half ago. I picked him up from the airport when he came back from overseas playing when all this kind of started. And I brought him back to my house. We ended up watching the Miami game. And it was really funny because half the stuff you don't remember. I thought that we were up the entire game when really we were losing. Wow. But then we came back and won. And just kind of going through each game, we just had that confidence that we were going to win, and that no matter what the game came down to, we were going to play a complete 40 minutes. No matter what our team we played, we were going to play that complete 40 minutes, and we ended up getting those buzzer beaters, which was great.
Well, that second win didn't upset me at all, and I know it was for all of us at Vandy Nation. We were appreciative of that one. But that's what great memories. It's a team you'll always remember. It's memories you'll always have. Nick, I could talk to you forever about this kind of stuff, and maybe we'll do it offline or another day, but I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for educating us about bigger than basketball, and I wish you the very best of luck with that going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. I really appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate all your kind words and helping me spread the word about Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, and of course, bigger than basketball.
Absolutely, Nick, it's been my pleasure. Now, guys, if you have questions or concerns about this, go to biggerthanbasketball.org. I'm sure Nick and some of the folks who are affiliated with that will be able to get answers for you. And it's a great resource. It's a great network. But guys, that'll conclude us for today, as we try to do every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. NOMBERG Law Live, bringing you interesting conversations with people in their areas of expertise. And Nick certainly fits that bill. And I want to hope that everybody is safe, being smart about things. I know that part of the country is starting to open up in different states a little bit, but just be careful what you're doing. Use common sense. Guys, have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you again another time. Be well.